Edition.
Hello and welcome. Thank you very much for joining us here on Times Now. This is the Newshour Special Edition, viewers, and I'm Heena Gambhir. Viewers, on 12th of June, an aircraft made by aviation giant Boeing and operated by Air India crashed in Ahmedabad. 261 people lost their lives. What went wrong? In those 30-odd seconds, viewers, after almost a month's probe, the first indication is out. India's crash that happened of this Air India flight, and its investigating agency now, AAIB, which is Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, after going through the rubble and ruins of AI-171, has pieced together a preliminary finding. It was released late in the night. Now, what we know, viewers, is clearly what led to the crash. This is something that we know. What we do not know after seeing this preliminary report is who is really responsible. What is the preliminary finding? Let's explain that to you now. That two fuel control switches, viewers, were moved to the cutoff position from the run position in a gap of just 1 second. And this is what I'm going to be explaining to you over the course of this bulletin today. The only other hint in the report is a nano but eerie conversation between the two pilots. One pilot, his voice not identified, it seems, noticed the switches in cut-off position. The cockpit voice recorder has captured one pilot asking, "Why did you cut off?" with the other responding, "I did not do so." This is the conversation that I'm talking about. So you had one pilot, as per the preliminary report, who is saying, "Why did you cut off?" referring to the fuel supply there. The other one is saying, I did not do something like that. Let me cut the clutter on the technical information. Viewers, every aircraft needs its engines working at their peak to deliver the thrust to take off. For thrust, engines need fuel. Inside the cockpit, there are two switches right below the thrust levers. They are moved by pilots to power the engines. Now, there is one switch for each engine. When the engines are at work, the switch position has to be on. When it's idle, it is the cutoff position. And there you can see, this is the switch that I'm talking about. There is a run position if it's up. There is a cutoff position when it is down. When it is on the cutoff position, it means the fuel supply is not happening. No fuel is being sent to the engine. This 1 second quick shutting of the switches led to fuel supply getting cut to the engines. Engines lost power. Pilots turned the fuel switches on, but it was too late. From here on, it's a who did it mystery. The report, viewers, does not tell us more. This information must be there in the recorders, the black box, for example. Was it a human action or mechanical failure? We do not know yet. What did the pilots talk about for 10 seconds when the switches were toggled from cutoff to run, and vice versa? Bird strike, bad weather, aircraft configuration, fuel contamination angle, and a possible sabotage theory. All of these have been ruled out completely. Remember, there was a flap misconfiguration theory that had also come after the plane crash took place. Even that has been ruled out. So what is the fine print of this report? Viewers, the report is nudging readers in the aviation industry towards a particular direction. Don't you feel the two nuggets of information are hinting that it was possibly pilot error that led to the crash? What's the natural corollary? Obvious, the deduction. We'll watch the Western media. If you watch the Western media today, you will have the answers. What's flashing big on Western media? This is what I have with me in my hand. So you have the Western media saying pilot cut off fuel to engines, no fault with the plane. Another report, Air India crash report shows pilot confusion over engine switch movement. Did the report say something like that it was a pilot error? No. But a narrative is being built in the Western media. Now, the excerpt of the conversation, viewers, between both the pilots perhaps is the reason. The report may be preliminary, but it has armed these channels and news outfits to announce a not guilty verdict in favor of the aviation giant Boeing. In India, aviation experts are shocked and amazed at the selective nudge character of the report that seems to be directing the blame towards the deceased, the pilots. at those who aren't around to defend themselves today. And viewers, that brings me to my key question tonight. Are pilots being made the convenient and easy target? Well, there is empirical evidence why this question must be raised, why it needs a debate, viewers. Do you remember the ill-fated Lion Air Flight 610? It was a Boeing 737 MAX plane, and I'm going to just bring you the visuals of that as well, the graphics that we are going to bring in just a bit for you. That plane crashed in Indonesia in 2018, 13 minutes into takeoff, killing 189 on board. What happened initially? A narrative was created against the pilots. Later, Boeing admitted to some serious systemic and fatal flaw, termed MAX in its aircraft design. Next, recall the Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302, March 2019. It was a Boeing 737 MAX. It crashed 6 minutes after takeoff. 149 passengers and 8 crew members died. It was a second crash involving a 737 MAX. Investigations revealed Boeing withheld critical safety information. And then you remember MH370, another tragic aviation mystery that sparked a big debate between pilot error and mechanical failure. Viewers, in most of such cases, we have seen pilots' conduct being the first casualty. The Western media may be jumping the gun, but we here at Times Now won't jump to any conclusion here. I want to underline two things which are important. One, a virtual clean chit to Boeing, the maker of the aircraft, and GE, the maker of the engine here, because there is no recommendation that has gone to either of them. The report does not talk about any recommendations for the two global behemoths. And the second, viewers, the hint that pilots were at fault. No one is talking about the fact that it's just a preliminary report. This question is also being asked because of a curious reference to FAA advisory of 2018, which you can see on your screens right now. In 2018, the US Federal Aviation Administration issued special airworthiness information bulletin regarding the potential problems with fuel control aircraft, including the 787 model. Now, this bulletin was issued after reports that fuel control switches on Boeing 737s were installed with their locking features disengaged. Crucially, Air India did not carry out the suggested inspections because the bulletin was an advisory rather than a mandatory requirement. And viewers, a question then arises here. Millions of humans are flying these machines that bring billions to the companies that make them or operate them. We ask, shouldn't the Caesar's wife be above suspicion? Shouldn't there always be an attempt to blame the pilots so that Caesar's wife never draws any suspicion? And that's what we are going to be decoding with our guests who are joining us live this evening. Captain Sam Thomas, President, Airline Pilots Union of India. Captain Saurabh Bhatnagar, former A320 pilot. Now, I'm also joined by Parvez Mania, former Executive Director, KFA and Aviation Expert. John Graddick, who is an aviation expert, also live with us. And Bernard Lavelle, who is an aviation expert. We also have with us Devesh Agarwal, Chief Analyst and Bangalore-Aviation.com. Wing Commander K. Dinesh, retired air crash investigator, is also live with us. And before I go across to all my guests who are joining us right now, I want to welcome another very special guest with me here in the studio, Mr. J.S. Rawat. He is former Joint Director General, DGCA. Sir, good evening. And good evening to all of you guests for joining us, on Times Now this evening. Sir, I want you to first explain to our viewers, how, the whole system really functions, how it looks like from inside the aircraft, what should we be looking at from a preliminary report. So I want you to look at this picture. This is in the preliminary report, and I see these engine switches. I want you to explain to our viewers why is it critical and the finding that it has come out with.
Because whatever this preliminary report is, that it is based on the CVR and DFDR readout. On the basis of that, at one point they have suggested that it is in the DFDR that at one point of time, this I think one after 090842, this was put to the off position.
Cutoff position.
Cutoff position. The cutoff position. Now it means there is no fuel supply to the engine, no fuel supply, there is no power. And after that, aircraft started sinking. After a few seconds, they try, when both the pilots have talked about this thing, what has happened, because both have realized what is happening, because they are sinking while the power is not there. So there must have been some talk. So, and one of the pilot who is monitoring one of the pilots flying, the pilot monitoring may have looked at the instruments, at the engine parameters and all those things. First of all, every pilot has to see the throttle levers, whether it is in the off position or it is in the full position. So, and then he has scanned, and he must have realized that this power, this fuel supply has in the off position. Then he has asked another pilot why it has happened.
How can it be in this cutoff position during such a critical time, you know, in a flight? How can it be there? If you can just come here, sir, closer to this image and explain to our viewers, how can it be? Because it doesn't look like that by mistake you can brush it up or down. Of course, there is effort that goes into it. That is how you can bring it up or down. And both in just 1 second, gap of 1 second. How can that really happen?
Because when you operate, you have to just pull it up and then put it in the off position. Similarly, when you have to start, then you have to this thing and then slide into the starting position. As you have mentioned about the FAA circular, FAA circular says the same thing. There are two parts of the FAA circular which was issued in 2018. They have found that switches were faulty, and accordingly they have issued the circular. In that circular says two things. There is a particular series of the aircraft 737, 800, 900, where they have said you have to replace this part from the existing part. And the second thing, as for the general, then you have to see when you pull out this thing, it should go to the next position. If it goes to the off position or on position without pulling it up, it means the switch, this device is not functioning properly, and it has to properly do it. So they have it has to just a simple check just to see if it is going to the position without pulling it up. It means there was switch was faulty, and that those switches required to be replaced at the time immediately.
But I want to go across to my other guests as well, and Mr. Rawat has explained to us, you know, as far as these switches are concerned. Captain Saurabh Bhatnagar, what is your assessment, you know, from this preliminary report that has come out? Because what I am curious about is that if there is a possibility of a technical failure as far as these switches are concerned, then why is there no recommendation for Boeing and the engine maker in this particular case? In a way, don't you think it's like giving a clean sheet to them?
Hi, good evening, Heena, and to all the panelists. Thank you for such a wonderful introduction, first of all. Yes, my take is totally different. What caught my eyes, first of all, I would say it's a very carefully drafted the preliminary investigation report, wherein only selective things have been given to the world, and the Western media has already been, told that yes, it's pilot's fault. Now the question is, 1 second, manually, humanly impossible. Technically, is there a software glitch? Because what is the FDR doing? The FDR is also getting the data that the switch has been moved from run to off position. That means that data is going to the FedEx also. That signal rather is going to the FedEx also. FedEx is thereafter commanding the fuel shutoff valve to off position. That's by movement of the switch. It's a mechanical fuel shutoff valve. Where is the electrical signal goes to the solenoid, to FedEx, and the solenoid and the motor is to on or off position. Now at the time of the takeoff, what is pilot flying doing? Looking outside. What is pilot monitoring doing? Looking inside, waiting for the positive rate to announce so that the pilot flying can say, okay, landing gear up. The conversation says that, yes, did you do it? He said, I didn't. That means what prompted pilot monitoring looking right at the instrument panel? That means there must be some warning which has kicked up. In the ECAS of engine valve fill, that is what prompted the pilot to ask, did you do it? Because he is not looking at the central pedestal panel to physically see the position of the switches at that point. He is looking to announce that positive rate, gear up. That's what the pilot monitoring job is doing. So can't it be a software function where is the wrong information or a signal, a wrong signal or a spurious signal which has gone to the FedEx and to the DFDR also, because DFDR is just signaling is that off position signal and the run position signal is going to DFDR and EFR. That is how it is not physically looking at the or getting the switches. Now what Lion Air you said is absolutely correct. Initially Boeing said it's a pilot fault, but when they realized that it was an MCAS, it is a faulty sensor, angle of attack sensor, which commanded the MCAS to kick in. That is what happened in the Lion Air crash. Finally, Boeing admitted that. Why can't we look at that angle also? I don't know whether it is correct or not, but a signal which is going, because when the pilot moves the switches to off or to run position, it generates an electrical signal which goes to the FedEx, and FedEx thereafter moves the fuel shutoff valve. The same signal goes to the, look, that's what it is, goes to the DFE pilot has moved or...
Okay, some very important points you have raised, and I want to go across to John Graddick as well, the aviation expert. Yes, sir. Interesting points you have made. Yes.
So that is what these, how the DFDR comes to know that the switch has been moved from the run to the off position. It will only get the signal. That is what the thing is. Can't there be a malfunction in the software which has generated the signal?
Yes. And I want to take that point across to John Graddick as well, who's an aviation expert. Why are we not looking at possibility of some kind of a system failure here?
We are. I think that, remember, this is a preliminary report. There is a requirement as far as ICAO standards to basically issue a preliminary report, not conclusive, with observations done within 30 days of the incident. And this was done. And I like to congratulate the AAIB for doing it within the mandated time frame. The world was looking to find out whether or not there was anything wrong with the airplane or with the engines. And the preliminary report, again, preliminary, says that there was no fault with the engines, there was no fault with the design and the operation of the aircraft. What was observed in the report was these switches. And the switches were in a run position throughout the roll, throughout the takeoff movement, and then for some reason, the switches were in a off position, a cutoff position, within seconds of liftoff of the aircraft. The question we have to ask ourselves, was that due to a mechanical, electronic, or physical movement of those cutoff switches? And we don't know the answer. We know the conversation that took place. We don't know who said what. Was it the pilot flying or the pilot monitoring? All I know is that when those cutoff switches are engaged, there is a conversation that takes place in the cockpit between pilot flying and pilot monitoring to confirm the change of state of those cutoff switches. There was no conversation in the cockpit, from what I understand, about moving the switches from run to cutoff. And the pilot flying seems to be the one that asked the question, why did those switches come off? So there's still a lot of work and a lot of investigation that is yet to happen.
Okay, you're also think we'll have to perhaps wait for the final report to really come out, because there is a lot that still needs to be answered. But here in India and in different parts of the world, especially in Western media, a narrative seems to be building, which is pointing towards pilot error here, something that we've seen happening in the past as well. And that's the reason why these questions today become extremely important. Is it convenient? And that's the reason why these kind of narratives come immediately after a crash or an accident of this kind happens, in the moment the preliminary report comes out. I want to go across to Mr. Sam Thomas as well, because he has issued a statement as well on behalf of Pilots Association of India, expressing concern over the secrecy surrounding the investigation. Could you elaborate on what specific gaps in transparency you're really referring to, and how this impacts the credibility of the probe that has taken so far?
Good evening. First of all, this report was released in the middle of the night at about 1:30. Secondly, it does not have the signature of anybody. Therefore, we feel that it's a very irresponsible way of treating something so significant. And what we've been asking all along is transparency. And we've now come to know that there are a few people who have been chosen by the AAIB who have no flying experience whatsoever. whatsoever. And we have reason to believe that they are not above board. And that is the reason we have raised these concerns. And in general, we are not happy with the way things are proceeding as far as this inquiry is concerned.
Okay, you're not happy with the way things have proceeded, and the association has highlighted that suitably qualified personnel were not included in the investigation. Who do you believe should be part of such a probe, and in what capacity really?
Firstly, a type-rated pilot should be on board. Other pilots should be on board. This concerns the facets that only pilots can understand. Engineers should be on board. We are even saying journalists can be on board. Subject matter experts have to be on board. There is no one in that qualification or that line of thought that we are seeing in any of these panels. Some ex-Air Force officer with engineering background cannot solve this problem. And it's playing into the hands of some of the big companies.
Okay, now that's a very serious charge. And I want to go across to Wing Commander K. Dinesh as well, who is an air crash investigator. Good evening, sir. You know, the manner in which this report was released late last night around 1:30, I mean, many people are finding that odd. The way some of the details were published in some foreign, online publications, people are questioning that as well. What is your understanding, and how will you like to respond to the concerns raised by Captain Sam Thomas?
Good evening to you. Let me begin by saying that AAIB's role is basically to find out facts and to make recommendations for safety. Okay, so as long as a preliminary report is in front of you, I don't think you need to listen to anyone or any other media, because we always will be discussing the report per se, not what the media or any other person is going to speak about it. Second thing is about the experience level of people that Captain Sam mentioned. I would like to just highlight for bringing the facts to perspective. The board members of the NTSB, which is the gold standards in aviation accident investigation, you can go to the website and check, they are not pilots. So those people, because I know some of those people who are in the AAIB, at least the IIC of this particular crash, the investigator in charge, he was in the AAIB of the Air Force, and he has done umpteen number of accident investigations. And I think every time we have come out with the facts of the accident. So it is more to do with having a trained investigator rather than it's about a pilot or an engineer. So I wanted to make this point very clear. Anyone who's trained as an investigator is the investigator for the case. The investigator's job is basically to look into his area of responsibility, and he has typically got groups under him. So the groups do their specialized job. There are engine groups, structure groups, aviation medicine, then there are meteorology group. There are about 12 groups in a standard aviation accident investigation. So the IIC's job, what Captain Sam is referring to, is basically to coordinate between these people. Okay. I see no concern with these officers working as the investigator in charges of the AIB at India. Okay. So let's lay that issue to rest, and then we can discuss further about the report per se.
Now, sir, we've specially got you on the show today because you are somebody who knows how these investigations really are conducted. So I want you to enlighten our viewers with some of the key takeaways, and if there is something unusual that you have found. Because when I was looking at this report, this 15-page report, one thing that I found a little unusual was just an excerpt of the conversation between two pilots that has been published, that has been paraphrased, put in this particular report, because that is now raising many questions, making a lot of people feel that it was perhaps pilot error. What do you like to say, sir?
So let's first understand what is the purpose of a preliminary report. For that, you must understand an investigation's purpose is to find out what happened, why it happened, and how it happened. And this report answers the first question as to what happened, just that bit. Okay. Now, what happened is what we need to know. So what happened is that the fuel switch came down, came to the off position, and the aircraft lost thrust and it's crashed. Now, the subsequent phase of the investigation, the investigators will try to find out why the fuel switch came to the off position. And if they have any other information about that, they will investigate that also. You must understand that air crash investigation is a very scientific method. I can give you one example. The investigators use a concept called exclusion method. That means they include all the factors that you can contribute to an accident. Then one by one they check them, fact finding, and then they remove them from the list. And eventually they come down to one or two aspects, deep dive into that subject, and that is how an investigation eventually finds out what happened on an aircraft.
Okay.
So this investigation in the times to come, that means after the preliminary report is out, they are going to do that job, and that is why it takes about a year or so, or maybe more sometimes, to come to the exact facts. Be aware of one more thing, that this report can also change subsequently as the facts become more and more evident. So what you trust is the final report. The preliminary report is just to say, as on date, what happened is what is the investigators' own observation. So let's not give too much of credence to the preliminary report. What matters in the aviation world is the final report, and that has got the stamp of approval of the entire world once it comes out. He was mentioning about pilots not being there or something. Let me tell you, all the people represented in the final investigation report, you can pick up any report and you can check that.
Okay. Parvez Damania, there is a specific reference that has been made in this report to FAA advisory of 2018. Can that be ignored? And also the point that there is no recommendation at all for the engine maker or the manufacturer of the plane in this particular case. Is it normal? Is that how one is supposed to look at this particular report? As Wing Commander K. Dinesh was also explaining to us that things can change completely also when the final report comes out. But in the preliminary report, if you have a doubt with that FAA advisory, the AAIB and the investigating team is putting a doubt in the minds of the people that we need to pay attention to this particular aspect. And then on the last page, we see that it mentions specifically no recommendation for either Boeing or GE. Is it okay? Is it normal?
No, it's absolutely not okay. The last page that caught my mind first, last page 15, second last paragraph, at this stage of investigation, no recommended action to Boeing 787-8 or GE GEnx 1B engine operators and manufacturers. That means in a very indirect way, you left Boeing off the hook. Try and understand this. People have lost lives. Families have been ruined. The crew, the pilots, so many people have died on ground. Somebody should be held criminally responsible for this. People cannot get away with this. If you see the initial pages of the report, it shows very clearly that Air India has performed the entire protocol of before the flight. It even writes that there was a snag that was there on the flight. The snag was corrected by the engineering team and the plane was accepted by the pilot. So in a way, this puts Air India at the clear. But I am not sure whether this puts... See, no sane pilot, there's so many pilots on your panel, no sane pilot is going to touch that switch unless it is for a reason. To cut off fuel while taking off is completely unheard of. No, like you said, either there was a mechanical, electrical or physical. I think it can be only electric or mechanical. Physically, we have to rule out why would the pilot cut off fuel unless there was a specific reason. So I think in any way blaming the pilot would be very wrong. And another thing, it's quite interesting that this report gives a very, very detailed report of the pilots. Their experience, on type, everything has been given. It even says that in the last 7 days, they've only flown 7 hours, 6 hours. Means neither they were overworked, neither they'd done more than the required hour of time. And pilots had followed all protocol. They had the experience. Not only they were experienced on this aircraft, the pilots were experienced on a number of aircraft. The commander was experienced on 310, 787, 777. The co-pilot was endorsed on the 320, 787. They had enough hours, not only total hours, but flying hours on time. So one cannot blame the pilots. They could not have shut off the switch. The switch, your experts can explain you better, and you explain the switch system better. It's not a switch that by mistake you can touch it and go off. You deliberately have to pull it on and put it off. So why would they do it? Only in certain cases this switch is put off. When the plane lands, engines are to be shut off, or an emergency which will be required to save lives of fire or something like that. So the pilots followed all protocols. If the Western media is indirectly trying to blame pilots, it's completely wrong. This is not acceptable. These people are not dead, are dead. They cannot defend themselves. And it would be wrong to take, hold them responsible. I'll just give you an idea.
Right.
You kept saying Boeing and GE. Let's not forget Honeywell. The switches are made by Honeywell. Honeywell is a $38.5 billion turnover. GE is $39.68 billion turnover. And Boeing is $69.44 billion turnover. These are giant corporations. Fighting them is not easy, but someone has to take a stand and hold these people responsible if they are at fault, I think.
I think that's a very important point you've made. And I want to take the views of Bernard Lavelle as well on this particular aspect specifically that you've raised. And what will you like to say?
Thank you, first of all, for having me. I think the people are starting to jump the gun here a bit. I give the previous speaker, the investigator, this is a preliminary report that's been put together in 30 days. Given the complexity of this investigation, they have stuck to the facts as they have found during that 30-day period. And if people want to speculate, whether it's pilot error or whatever, I think they're jumping the gun, and we shouldn't be doing that. Just as we shouldn't be speculating back 30 days ago as to what the cause of the crash might have been. So we have got some information. We know it's the fuel cutoff switches were in the cutoff position as opposed to the run position. The question is now as to why that was the case. Was it some mechanical error? Was it some kind of electrical error? Was it some form of pilot error? But I don't think the report actually says, as it shouldn't do, it's not actually drawing a conclusion. It's just laying out the possibilities there at the moment. And we'll get to the point, and it might be 12 months or might be 18 months when we get the final report, that they will bring their conclusions to bear. Just on the advisory, the 2018 advisory, just on a note in terms of perhaps public confidence, there could be, in my view, a requirement maybe for the FAA just to revisit that advisory. As you said in your introduction, it was an advisory, not a mandatory requirement. Yes, the preliminary report hasn't found anything to indicate an issue, but that's obviously because everything's been done in 30 days. But perhaps for public confidence, maybe the FAA should just revisit that advisory and see whether it should be made mandatory or not. But I think whether it's Western media, whether it's people in their homes, I think people are jumping the gun here, just as they did at the very beginning, as to what the cause is here. And I don't think the report looks to blame the pilots. I think it just lays out the potential issues that could have led to the switches being turned off. And those switches, you turn the fuel off, it's like walking into a room and turning the light off. Everything goes dark. Those engines would quickly have lost their thrust, and it takes a matter of seconds, but too long for those engines to reignite and get the thrust back. And basically, unfortunately, the pilots and the people on the plane just ran out of time.
Okay. Devesh Agrawal, you know why the country is waiting for, was actually waiting for this particular report to come out? Because it is also about trust in the aviation sector, in our regulators, because what happened was shocking. It had sent shockwaves, across the country, across the world as well. It was the first Dreamliner to crash like this. And we were waiting for the preliminary report to come out and perhaps give us some answers. But what it has actually done is, deepen the mystery further. What will you like to say to the flyers today, to the passengers today who are quite worried.
Firstly, good evening and thank you for having me. Good evening to all the panelists. I want to make one quick observation before you proceed. See, we tend to read what we would like to read. If you notice, at no point in the report does it say the fuel switches were moved to the off position. It says the switch transitioned to the cutoff position. And if you recall, one of our earlier panelists was a pilot. See, we have seen ourselves that we can have an electrical switch and it short circuits and the switch is still in that position, right? But the circuit has gone in a different direction. So we do not know if this is an electronic or an electrical failure because the switch may be mechanically operated, but the back end of the switch is still an electrical signal, an electronic signal. So that is something we should focus on. Certain words that are in the report, it uses the word transition. Also, everybody is focusing on this 2018 FAA advisory, but nobody has looked at a 2020 December 17th service bulletin from GE, which is there, which clearly says the NM4 processor, microprocessor on the engine and fuel control system of the electronic engine control of the GE NX-1B engine needs to be changed because the solder ball is melting in thermal conditions. It is almost like a mandatory circular from GE. What is very surprising is the AAIB has not referenced this circular because it directly concerns the engine. It has been issued by the engine manufacturer and it was issued back in 2020. And it very specifically says the reason we are issuing the service bulletin because this IC, when if it becomes loose, will result in what's called an LOTC, loss of thrust control. And they say an LOTC event has occurred because of this reason, and because of this reason we are issuing a service bulletin. So that is something that we have completely overlooked. I really wish to bring it to everybody's attention, and I wish people start focusing on that.
Do you think it's deliberate or perhaps an inadvertent error because they had this 30-day timeline?
No. I would not like to speculate. It is altogether possible that they have not yet considered it. I do not know. I would not like to speculate. That is the last thing we should be doing. You asked me about the independence. I fully concur that India is now the third largest aviation market in the world. We are the fifth largest economy in the world. The world's eyes are on us. We are a growing nation occupying our place in the world. But the fact is that we still need to earn the respect on the aviation front when it comes to independence, because we see the DGCA, the regulator, is under the Ministry of Civil Aviation. The AAIB is under the Ministry of Civil Aviation. Airports Authority of India is under the Ministry of Civil Aviation. We need to have an independent accident investigation board, which is directly funded by Parliament, not under any ministry. Similarly, we need to have a civil aviation authority that is completely independent of any ministry.
Okay. Mr. J.S. Rawat, a very important point was highlighted about the switch maker here by Mr. Devesh Agarwal. How will you like to respond to this particular issue?
Now, this, as it has been said by the panelists, that because ultimately it is an electric signal, you switch, make the mechanical change in the switch, and then it goes to the converted into the electric signal, which goes to the, and ultimately start the activate motors and other things for the fuel supply. That is one of the possibility which will be determined, because now it is a preliminary report, now it has not been done, but it will be determined why it has happened. Because it will go into detail. Whatever another panelist has about the about the engines. There was some chip engine shouldering was there, which was required to be melted. But as per this report, it says that all the mandatory this modification and other things were carried out in this aircraft. What we can presume from there that probably that advisory circular from the instructions from the GE was also included in that.
Okay.
But if it is not included, it will be looked into by the investigation board.
Okay.
Now, one thing I wanted to say that what has happened, everything has happened during the 21 minutes, 21 seconds, sorry. Now, during those 21 seconds, there have been a lot of commotion in the cockpit because the one pilot looking at why it has happened, what we are supposed to do. So those things are not clear. And who was the pilot flying, who was what other person has said, that is also not clear. In the absence of these evidences, now we are just going on the evidence. They have asked for this thing. It is off or on. So nothing else is there.
Okay, I want to go back to Devesh Agarwal and Wing Commander K. Dinesh. Wing Commander K. Dinesh, to you first. Some very, very pertinent points have been raised in the last few minutes. And, you know, a lot of people spoke about jumping the gun. So I have this direct question for both of you this evening, and others can also join in if they want to. But Wing Commander K. Dinesh, why then no recommendation at all for the engine maker or the plane manufacturer? Do you think that could have been avoided, perhaps?
Okay, let's look at the current status. The AAIB has given you the facts, and if you noticed, they stopped short of speculating on what could be the reason for this particular switch movement. Okay, now I can tell you as an investigator that there are possibilities. Okay, just for the sake of discussion. A, it could be a software glitch. It could be a hardware glitch. It could be pilot A moving the switch, pilot B moving the switch, and we know that there are only two pilots in the cockpit. And it could have been one external intruder coming and moving the switch. Now, our report, AAIB report, does not talk about the last part, that is anyone coming in, so we can rule that out. We have these four reasons in hand, and it is most likely that the AAIB has found a inclination towards one or the other reason, that they have not found a reason to give a preliminary warning to the Boeing or to any other person. Okay, now these are all speculations that we are doing without having the facts in our hand.
But my question is straight. Aren't we absolving them of their responsibility? What was the need to mention this particular point is my question. I mean, it's just a preliminary report. We don't want to come to any conclusion. We know preliminary report is only supposed to tell us what happened. I agree with all of that. Then why absolve the engine maker and the plane maker in this case completely of their responsibility? What if there was a software issue?
That line wasn't
nobody
required.
is absolving anyone of any responsibility here. I think that's where again we are jumping the gun. The preliminary report, if we try to understand, is actually not meant for the public.
Okay.
Yeah, so as per the ICAO specification, as per the ICAO document Annexure 13, a preliminary report is to be raised within the 30 days for the consumption of the stakeholders in this.
Okay.
But another para in chapter 5 says, if that accident is likely to invite more public attention, like is this case, then you may want to make it public. So let's go by the ICAO. ICAO has thought of all these things and made these rules.
Okay.
So they very specifically said, if you think an accident is going to make a public impact like this case, because Dreamliner's first hull loss, and of course the circumstances.
And that is exactly the reason why I asked you, Mr. Devesh Agarwal, also, that it is about trust in the aviation sector. I mean, people are worried today because of what happened. And we really thought there would be some answers, because it is an unprecedented situation that we are dealing with. It's not like a regular, mid-air engine malfunction or some technical glitch here and there. It's about lives of people that have been lost. 241 out of 242 on board have died. So many who were there in that medical hostel have also died. Devesh Agarwal, closing comments.
Yes, I agree with you, but I also agree with Mr. Dinesh. This is a preliminary report, and just because, you see, why they say that statement is because if there is no clear reason, and there is no reason for them to make a recommendation on the hardware at this time. That does not mean in any way, shape or form that Boeing or GE or Air India or anybody else, or Honeywell or anybody else in this thing is absolved.
Okay.
A preliminary report is just that. It's a statement of fact. Aviation, I would still urge your viewers, aviation is still by far the safest mode of travel. And the purpose of an accident investigation is not to find fault, but to find the reason. I tell people this is the 40th anniversary of Emperor Kanishka bombing. A direct result of the Kanishka bombing is the fact that today all bags that are put on board an aircraft, whether check-in or carry-on, are X-rayed.
Right.
The bombing of Pan Am 103 over Scotland resulted in the direct thing that every bag that is put on board an aircraft has to be matched to the passenger that is traveling on the aircraft. There shall be no unaccompanied baggage on a plane.
Right.
So the aviation system today is increasingly becoming safer on the blood of people who have perished in past accidents and have provided those learnings to us.
Absolutely.
And so I would still urge the viewers, please feel safe. Please proceed to fly. Let the accident investigators do their job. We will get the answers. The whole world is watching us. This is not something that can be brushed under the carpet,
Absolutely.
no matter how
And
hard anybody tries.
we need transparency, accountability. That's the need of the hour, because reviving trust in the sector is something that is going to be extremely important after what happened in Ahmedabad exactly 1 month ago. I'm completely out of time. Thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. Captain Sam Thomas, Captain Saurabh Bhatnagar, Mr. J.S. Rawat, Parvez Davania, John Graddick, Bernard Lavelle, Devesh Agarwal, Wing Commander K. Dinesh. Appreciate all for joining us here on this bulletin.